Hello students, in this video I will discuss the chapter Landscape of the Soul. So let's get started. A wonderful old tale is told about the painter Wu Duozi who lived in the 8th century. His last painting was a landscape commissioned by the Emperor Wangzong to decorate a palace wall. The master had hidden his work behind a screen. The master here refers to Wu Duozi, so only the emperor would see it. For a long while, the emperor admired the wonderful scene, discovering forest, high mountains, waterfalls, clouds floating in an immense sky, men on hilly paths, birds in flight. So the emperor discovered everything. The real essence of a landscape painting, everything was visible in that painting. Here I quote, "Look, sir," said the painter. Again I quote, "In this cave at the foot of the mountain dwells a spirit." The painter clapped his hands and the entrance to the cave opened. The inside is splendid, beyond anything words can convey. "Please let me show your majesty the way." By saying this, Wu Duozi entered in his own painting. The painter entered the cave, but the entrance closed behind him, and before the astonished emperor could move or utter a word, the painting had vanished from the wall. Not a trace of Wu Duozi's brush was left, and the artist was never seen again in this world. And after that, Wu Duozi was never seen again. He mysteriously disappeared inside his own painting. Such stories played an important part in China's classical education. The books of Confucius and Zhuangzi, these are the two famous Chinese philosophers, are full of them. That means their books are full of all these anecdotes or folk tales, we can say. They help the painter to guide his disciple in the right direction. Beyond the anecdote, they are deeply revealing of the spirit in which art was considered. Contrast this story or another famous one about a painter who wouldn't draw the eye of a dragon. Why? Because he was scared that after he would paint the eye, or after he would draw the eye of a dragon, the dragon would attack him and would destroy the entire locality. He wouldn't draw the eye of a dragon he had painted for fear it would fly out of the painting. With an old story from my native Flanders that I find most representative of Western painting. In 15th century Antwerp, a master blacksmith called Quentin Messiaens. Now his story is also very interesting, just like the story of Wu Duozi that we have read few minutes earlier. Now Quentin Messiaens fell in love with a painter's daughter. The father would not accept a son-in-law in such a profession, so Quentin had to do something, right? So Quentin sneaked means to enter stealthily inside someone's room. Here Quentin entered the gallery or the painting chamber of his lover's father. So I continue. So Quentin sneaked into the painter's studio and painted a fly on his latest panel. Panel we can say in the cardboard wall or in the canvas wall, we can say. That is the meaning of the term panel. With such delicate realism that the master tried to swat it away. Swat means to drive it away because it was too real. Later it was found out to be a painting. There lies the concept of delicate realism. Quentin was immediately admitted as an apprentice into his studio. The daughter's father was very impressed with Quentin's artistic talent, and immediately he was admitted as an apprentice into his studio. He married his beloved and went on to become one of the most famous painters of his age. And later Quentin became one of the most famous painters of his age. These two stories, that is the one related with Wu Duozi and this one related with Quentin Messiaens, illustrate what each form of art is trying to achieve. A perfect illusionistic likeness in Europe, the essence of inner life and spirit in Asia. And another important concept regarding this chapter is that art and spirituality. Sometimes it crosses the domain of reality and reaches the infinite. That can be termed, or that can be cited during the painting, or that incident related with Wu Daozi, that it reaches the infinite zones of artistic excellence and beauty, crossing the borders of realism. In the Chinese story, now we are again back to the story related with Wu Daozi. In the Chinese story, the emperor commissions a painting and appreciates its outer appearance, but the artist reveals to him the true meaning of his work. The emperor may rule over the territory he has conquered, but only the artist knows the way within. Yes, the emperor may have might, may have forces. He may be the ruler or the emperor, or he may have extra authority and power over the territory or over the domain that he had conquered. But a true artist knows the way within. And the essence of a Chinese painting is that you have to enter the mind of a painter. Unlike the European painter who wants you every time to borrow his eyes, in case of Chinese painting, you can enter the mind of a painter. Now let me continue. Let me show the way, the dua. Dua, actually, dualism or dua, it means two. A word that means both the path or the method and the mysterious works of the universe. The painting is gone, but the artist has reached his goal beyond any material appearance. A classical Chinese landscape is not meant to reproduce an actual view as would a Western figurative painting, whereas the European painter wants you to borrow his eyes and look at a particular landscape exactly as he saw it from a specific angle. Yes, I already told you all regarding this. The European painter wants you to analyze the painting exactly the way he wants to show it. But a Chinese painter gives you the freedom to appreciate the painting in whichever way you can. So I repeat the line once again. The European painter wants you to borrow his eyes and look at a particular landscape exactly as he saw it from a specific angle. The Chinese painter does not choose a single viewpoint. In case of a Chinese painting, the viewpoints are multiple. It is plural, not singular, unlike the case of the European painter. His landscape is not a real one, and you can enter it from any point. Yes, you have to enter the mind of the painter in case of a Chinese painting to appreciate the Chinese painter finally. So you can enter it from whichever way you can, from any point, then travel in it. The artist creates a path for your eyes to travel up and down, then back again in a leisurely movement. This is even more true in the case of the horizontal scroll, in which the action of slowly opening one section of the painting, then rolling it up to move on to the other, adds a new dimension of time which is unknown in any other form of painting. It also requires the active participation of the viewer, because not only a viewer has to appreciate the art, but a viewer has to appreciate the spiritual significance of the beauty of the art. That is very important. Not only a viewer will appreciate the beauty of the art, but the viewer will appreciate the spiritual significance of the beauty of the art. And there lies the essence of the Chinese painting. Let's continue. It also requires the active participation of the viewer, who decides at what pace he will travel through the painting. Participation which is physical as well as mental. Yes, in order to appreciate a Chinese painting, the exercise is both mental as well as physical. The Chinese painter does not want you to borrow his eyes. He wants you to enter his mind. Yes, the Chinese painter actually wants you to enter his mind. I already talked about this earlier. The landscape is an inner one, a spiritual and conceptual space. Yes, the landscape is an inner one. It is a spiritual and conceptual space. Now we are moving on to the final segment, and that is San Shui, We will talk about yin and yang, and we will talk about the middle void also. That is from the painting perspective, and later from the entire world perspective, from the arts perspective. So let's come to the final part now of discussion related with this chapter. This concept is expressed as San Shui. Literally, it means mountain water, which used together represent the word landscape. More than two elements of an image, these represent two complementary poles, reflecting the dualist view of the universe. The mountain is yang, and yang is actually masculine, and yin is feminine. So the mountain is yang, reaching vertically towards heaven. And what are the features of yang? It is stable, warm and dry in the sun. And the water is yin. It is horizontal and resting on the earth. And what are the features of yin? It is fluid, moist and cool. Now the interaction means the communion or the meeting. The interaction of yin, the receptive feminine aspect of universal energy, and its counterpart yang, active and masculine, is of course the fundamental notion. Notion means the ideology, or we can say notion also means the concept of dualism. What is often overlooked is an essential third element, and that essential third element is known as the middle void region, where their interaction takes place. This can be compared with the yogic practice of pranayam. In pranayam, what exactly is followed? Breathe in, retain and breathe out. Now retain part is actually the middle void region. The interaction is of between yang and yin, masculine and feminine counterpart, is only possible with the help of this middle void. It acts as the cord of communion, or we can say communication, conduit of communication. That is the very important term. So let's continue. Breathe in, retain, breathe out. The suspension of breath is the void where meditation occurs. The middle void is very essential. It is very significant. Nothing can happen without it. Its contribution is immense. Nothing can happen without it. Hence, the importance of the wide unpainted space in Chinese landscape. So, the wide unpainted space in Chinese landscape is actually referred to as the middle void. This is also where man finds a fundamental role. In that space between heaven and earth, he becomes the conduit of communication, the main medium of communication between both the poles of the universe. His presence is very important or very essential, even if it is only been suggested. Still, his presence is very important. It is very essential. Far from being lost or oppressed by the lofty peaks, that means taking from the world perspective, heaven and earth, these two can only meet, or these two can only interact, or their interaction can only occur with the help of human beings. So human beings can be cited as the middle void, taking the entire concept from the holistic point of view, or from the world perspective. So let me continue. His presence is essential. His means human beings. His presence is essential even if it's only suggested. Far from being lost or oppressed by the lofty peaks, he is, in Francois Chiang's wonderful expression, the eye of the landscape. Yes, so in Francois Chiang's wonderful expression, it can be cited as the eye of the landscape. According to Francois Chiang, the painter and the art critic, according to him, it is exactly referred as the eye of the landscape. Dear students, listen to the video, and if there is any confusion or any doubt, let me know. Thank you, students. Thank you all.